Hello and welcome to day 4 of Pack Expo Connects. I hope your week has been going great and you've been taking advantage of all the great opportunities that have been happening all week long at Pack Expo Connects. So welcome to our presentation today. My name is Kim Young. I am part of the marketing team here at Inland Packaging. For those of you who are not familiar with Inland, a little bit about us. We have been in business for over 75 years as a family-owned and operated label and packaging supplier. So we have been working with small to medium brands as well as large and big and national brands, offering them quality and innovative label and packaging solutions. This can range from cut and stack labels, pressure sensitive, shrink sleeve, in mold, and even flexible packaging options. So the reason we're here today is to talk about the combating container shortages that many of you have been dealing with for the last 8 months. We all know that we can blame the pandemic on this, right? But let's talk through the aspects of really what markets have been affected, the different container types that are effective, and how we can use a versatile label supply to get through this for the next weeks, months, years to come. So I'm going to dig in here shortly, but please take advantage of the chat feature on the side to submit any questions. We have our Inland team members monitoring that throughout the presentation, and we'll do the best to save time for questions at the end. So let's get to it. When the pandemic hit, consumers began to bulk buy and pantry load the essentials. So this included products like food, beverage, toilet paper, sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, just to name the top 5. Consumers were making purchases that certain markets couldn't have ever anticipated. So anyone here consider buying a pool or maybe a bike for their kid this summer? The spike of those purchases made it impossible for consumers to get their hands on them and impossible for brands to anticipate this leading into 2020. But as much as I would prefer to talk about laying poolside with each of you, that is not why we're here today. Let's start out by talking about canned food. So tin cans, primarily used in the food market, leading up to 2020, we were starting to see a bit of a decline in canned food. Consumers were focused more on the better for you trend, which included shelf stable fruits and vegetables and moving away from the products that are more shelf stable. However, that being said, that changed with the hit of the pandemic. The chart here shows a comparison of fruits and vegetables with frozen, shelf stable versus fresh foods from 2019 in the month of April to 2020, and the dramatic increase that we saw in just the first month or two of the pandemic. Much of the canned food shortages can be attributed to that pantry loading and the bulk buying that I talked to earlier, but we're still seeing that a bit today. So we're still seeing that people are preferring to entertain at home rather than going out to the bars and restaurant scene. Now let's talk about aluminum cans. Leading up to 2020, we were seeing a shift again in favor actually of aluminum cans, which were taking share from the glass and the plastic bottles. Much of that was coming from consumers wanting the ease of use, the accessibility, the ability to take their beverages to and from with ease. So beverage companies had their strategies that included their beverages to be in kegs, supplementing with other container types as well, like aluminum and plastic. However, at the hit of the pandemic, the need for kegs came to a screeching halt, leaving these brand owners looking to move their product that was previously allocated to kegs into a different container type, in turn pushing a ton of that into aluminum cans, leading to the shortage because they didn't want this product to be going to waste. Now, this chart right here, not going to be shocking to anyone who's been living the year of 2020. So it's showing us a different perspective in terms of how people were purchasing these types of beverages. So we topped out at a 477% increase from 2019 to 2020 at the end of April. Again, not surprising to anyone, but obviously we can attribute much of this to the container shortage when we're trying to combat a 477% increase. We'd be silly to not think that this is a huge indicator. Now, Some of the most coveted products of 2020, I'm talking about hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, things of that nature, are packaged using plastic containers. So it is not only food and beverage that are struggling with these shortages. So all packaging types, all markets are feeling the struggle. Many of you can attest to that. Each brand is affected differently depending on your location, your region, your market, and even your buying power within the industry. So I think it goes without saying that it's not a one size fits all solution here. So even though can and plastic manufacturers are busting their butts to produce more, it isn't expected that these shortages are going away anytime soon. So how can you adjust your strategies around the labels and packaging to get you what you need? Which is why we're here today to talk about a few different suggestions. Hopefully what we talk about just gets the ball rolling and gives you some ideas to throw around with your team to see what might make sense for you. So here is our first idea. Streamline your main products. If your container is hard to come by, you do not want to be wasting and producing something that is not going to fly off the shelf. So it's important to just double down on those products that sell the best. So downsize your product portfolio for now to your top 5, maybe 10 sellers to make sure your containers are being utilized to the fullest capacity. At this point, we don't need those Christmas tree scented hand sanitizer, so we'll give you a pass on that this year. Along with that same mindset, the aluminum can shortage. With some of the beverage category, according to a Nielsen study, 69% of Americans say that they're purchasing alcohol brands that they know and trust. So this wasn't the same conversation that we were having a year or so ago. We were seeing consumers wanting to try new things. But under the current conditions, many consumers seem to be less willing to experiment with a product or brand that they aren't used to. Now let's talk about idea number 2, switching it up. We're talking about containers and label type here. It's time to think outside the box. I know you all do it all the time, but now is as good a time as ever. Think about what you've been doing the last few years. I know it's been working, but let's see if there's an easy fix to combat the shortages that you're dealing with. So let's talk about pre-printed containers. Similar to the concept of streamlining your product, it may be more important to skip that direct printing right now. As we know, each of those containers are a hot commodity. So in the interim, utilize shrink sleeves or pressure sensitive labels to brand your cans. It can be a very cost-effective option to ensure that those precious items don't go to waste. Now, if you're worried because you already have cans that have printing on them, fun little fact. Just throw a label right over that and no one will be the wiser. So let's stick with that. Let's talk about the aluminum can shortage as an example. Your favorite beer. We know that drinking beer is just as enjoyable if you drink it out of a can or a bottle for the most part. Now, as we discussed earlier, we know the beer sales have gone through the roof. What do you do about this increased demand? You can fill the cans that you had planned for, but now what? Now you need more. This is a perfect opportunity to utilize a co-packer. So many co-packers have standard container sizes and shapes that would be pretty much a drop-in solution for you. The great part about co-packer is that they have done the dirty work for you. They have the containers, they have the correlating die lines and the processes to transition artwork established already. So they are able to use your existing supplier, or they probably have one of their own that they like to use. So having those two options to play around with to see what will get you what you need the quickest in the end is key. So just because you are fresh out of cans for that high demand beer doesn't mean your hands are tied. Utilize a co-packer to fill that void. Idea number 3, take advantage of digital printing. Let's be honest, on the daily, we are having to change our path, and your packaging is no different. Now more than ever, as you are navigating through these container shortages, digital printing can come to your rescue. When you need to make that change on the fly, you surprisingly got the shipment of containers that you needed, or you didn't. These are the small to medium runs with the quick turnaround time that you can receive with digital printing, and it will come in clutch as the crazy dynamics of your supply chain hit. So just roll with the punches, make sure you keep digital printing top of mind. Next up, consider flexible packaging. Flexible packaging is another great consideration as we push through the container shortages. So from Inland's perspective, we honestly have not felt as much of an impact or challenge from our supply chain when it comes to flexible packaging materials. So does your product make sense to be put into a flexible package? No? Well, let's not count it out just yet. Let's look around at those store shelves. I can think of a few products that 5 years ago I would have never anticipated to be found on a non-rigid container. The first thing that comes to mind is the tuna in a pouch, right? Never would have thought that you could ever get tuna not in a can. But maybe now, in these challenging times, it's the time to have those innovative thoughts that in years previous you said no way, and put them into motion because you truly had nothing to lose. Now, since we're on the topic of flexible packaging, I think it's worth mentioning as we continue to blame as much as we can on this pandemic and our struggles. But let's think of how it has pushed the idea of single-serve packaging even further in the direction of flexible packaging. So in this pandemic, flexible packaging single-serve pouches are a perfect avenue to put your product into to fill that single-serve need of consumers. We are looking for the safety aspect. We are not going to be passing around those bags of trail mix or sharing a big old bottle of sangria anytime soon. We want each of these products to have our own individualized packaging or container, which in turn is also leading to some of these shortages. Much of the mass-produced products are not going into those industrial-sized containers or kegs right now, and they're going into these individual bottles instead. Now, last but certainly not least, we have to focus on your supply chain. So I can speak for Inland in the amount of communication that has occurred with our customers and our suppliers the last 7 to 8 months. And I'm sure many of you can echo that sentiment, which leads us to idea number 5, rely on your suppliers. Whether it is your co-packer, your label supplier, or even your product manufacturer, you need to trust them. Suppliers should be offering up innovative solutions during this challenging time and doing what they can to truly put your best interest in the forefront. Partnership with a key supplier who is forward-thinking and forward-looking to support your business is crucial. It is also important to consider your suppliers. Are they a true partner for you? As you're navigating the show, consider your current supplier. What do they do that's great? Where do you think there might be a gap? Or maybe just vet out the other options of a contingency supplier, because we know now more than ever, contingency is key. That is exactly what Pack Expo Connects is all about. Networking, building those connections. And as the future few months or even years can continue to be uncertain with the pandemic, it would be worth your time to build those relationships outside of your current supplier in the time of need. I know that what all of you are going through right now is not easy. And the thought of making a big change and pivoting, my favorite 2020 word, can be really scary at this point in time. But the importance of versatility with your label supply is key right now. So I know I alluded to it earlier in the presentation, but Inland has a strong customer service team, sales team, and technical team that is here to support you through these changes. And it's more important than ever to have a supplier and have a team behind you when you're making these changes to combat these container shortages that are happening throughout 2020 and beyond here. So I know I didn't leave a ton of time, or any time I should say, for questions. So sorry about that, but hopefully our Inland crew was able to help you out and answer the questions that you did have throughout the presentation. But if we missed anything, I will be sure that we go back and circle back through any questions or comments and connect with you. So with that, as we conclude this, please, if anything else comes up, reach out to anyone on our showroom floor, and we look forward to talking to you. Enjoy the rest of the show.